Well, let's go ahead and get started because we're going to, if last session is any indicator, we're going to not be able to cover everything. So let's get started. So first and foremost, now, I do want to tell you, explain what Lucy explained to me. I don't have all the documentation on this, so I can't give a full explanation. This was added sometime this past summer by Moodle. It is an accessibility function. So that is something you want to be aware of. There is no current mandate from the administration. You have to leave it in. I do agree it's been implemented in a very unfortunate way. Like, it is not a great implementation as far as accessibility features go. But that being said, be aware. I don't know, again, what I don't know is the specifics about who it's meant for, like what particular accommodation it's meant to help with, but it's something to be aware of. And so I'm going to try and get more information out, and perhaps at a future faculty meeting, I can give more details. But if you want to remove it, here's how you do it. So you're in your Moodle page, you go up to the little cog on the top for editing, you go to edit settings, you scroll down, and completion tracking, no. So you just turn off completion tracking and that's yes. Save it and no, they're all gone.
Like, is there, since I don't know anything about it except they're annoying, is there a reason that it would be helpful to me?
So if you, I can show you what it does from a student's perspective. So what it's meant to do is it gives them a visual cue of things they have and haven't done by essentially providing them a checkbox. Really, it's just a visual checkbox. So if it's turned on, and incidentally, you can turn it off also by individual activity. So this is the global option to just turn them all off. You can turn individual ones on or off. But if I change my view to a student view,
Didn't I do that?
there you go. So if you want to see what your students see, click up here, and then you click switch, change role or switch role to, and then you can click student. And then you will see as a student sees. It's very, very useful. But then if you actually click on these boxes, it just changes to a green box that says done.
Okay,
So,
but we can do that individually on all the little boxes. We decide to keep it or not keep it.
and it's in the same place. You do have to click advanced if you want to do this at the individual activity level. So let me show you what that looks like really quick. So you go back up there and then you click return to my normal role to get back to an instructor role. If you want to turn it off individually, make sure editing is turned on.
Rodney, I know this is kind of job security for you in some senses, but is there any way we can contact Moodle so we're not doing every class every semester going through and flipping this off? Is there any way we can tell them, hey, we don't want it?
Right now, it is on by default. There's another accessibility feature incidentally coming out, or maybe already be rolled out to some courses, that puts gray line. Actually, you can see it here. You have these gray lines that are in between that's another accessibility feature that was recently added. That one cannot be turned off at all. I talked to Lucy about that one already. This one will be on by default, so you will have to turn it on, turn it off for each course, each semester. Yeah. But to turn off for an individual activity, you click edit the settings for the individual activities. Then again, you go to activity completion. Now you do have to click unlock completion options
In the activity.
in the individual activity. And then gives you these options, and you can click do not indicate activity completion. And then when you return, that box will be gone just for that one activity. Now it is not there. So if you want it for other activities, but maybe you don't want it for Zoom, because Zoom isn't really activity they can complete, so to speak, at least on a day-to-day level. So you can do that. Right now, those are the only two ways that I'm aware of to turn it off, either individually or globally.
And is this gonna go all through all of your weeks? If you put up a PowerPoint, if you put up a document, it's gonna be on all of them?
Yep. So like if I have blank presentations, every presentation.
Yeah.
triples the size of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, and I mean, I don't want to get into discussion of
Team.
universal design language and UX, but I will say this is, in my opinion, this was a poor way of implementing an accessibility feature because accessibility features are important. We want, and that's part of the reason to use Moodle is because we want to be accessible. We want to make sure that every student has access to education that we're supposed to be providing them. But part of the problem is when it's implemented poorly, nobody wants to use it, and ultimately it's those students that potentially suffer. So just be aware when you're turning it off, and you know, I'll talk to Lucy, and you know, I mean, I'm sure we're not the only school that thinks this was done poorly. So hopefully Moodle will get some feedback and try and implement it in a better manner.
A lot said that it was because there's some lawsuit against Google.
That could be. I mean, it's unfortunate, but a lot of things come about from lawsuits, right? Okay, so were there any extras of those papers? Oh, yes. So they could bring it up in my tablet, but that'll actually probably take longer than this. Oh, you just leave those there. This will be good enough for me now, and I'll grab the rest later. Okay, so first of all, I should have started with this. You're being recorded. Well, not you, you're being recorded. This is recording. This is recording my voice. If you speak very loudly, it might record your voice too. Just be aware of that. And I will be posting this one or last one, or maybe a combination of them to EdTech YouTube channel afterwards. Please like and subscribe. Once we get to 100 subscribers, I can get a custom URL instead of the long string of digits it is now. This document in a digital form is available via the QR code if you want to be able to click on any of these links, or if you want to see the examples. That includes some examples from our own Fritz Moga that I didn't include on this because it would have been 5 pages long and would have wasted a lot of color ink. Okay, so first set of functions I want to talk about is the creative engaging. So what are some things that you could do to maybe make your Moodle page look a little bit more interesting or engaging? The first is the cover image. How many of you currently use a cover image? So a couple of you. How many of you would like to use a cover image? How many of you want to use this cover image? No, okay, that's great. So how do you put in a cover image like this? Well, it's very simple. So you go onto your Moodle page. I'm going to click over here, and you go again into settings, click edit settings. And you just drag or drop an image or a GIF. This box is still loading, sorry. Drag or drop an image or a GIF right into here. That's all you have to do. So if you have another window open on your computer that has a little GIF or an image that you like, grab it, drag and drop it, place it right here, it'll upload, and you now have a course image. Right? Some things that you should know though, is you've seen the form factor for that course image is very narrow. I don't know, it's like a 1:21 aspect ratio, something like that. Specifically, it's 281 by 150 pixels. So what that means is, depending on what you upload, it will be cropped. So just be aware of that. When I first did my Travolta meme, his head kept getting cropped off. So what that means is you may need to pre-crop your own image. There are lots of free websites. All I did was a Google search for, I'm using a GIF here, so I did GIF crop. And I found a website that I could just upload the GIF that I had chosen. And it gave me a little box that I could choose exactly how I wanted to crop it. And then I cropped it and spit it back out to me. And then I uploaded it. And now you can actually see his face. So you may need to pre-crop it. It may not look. So you can just try it, throw it in. If it doesn't look the way you want, find a free place to crop it. Or if you need other help, just let me know and I can show you how to do that. So that adds some personality. So it looks good.
Brad.
Yes,
I
sir.
did that because in our ed tech meeting, we were talking about it. And what I like about it is I don't have any of the same pictures. Maybe those are the same classes, but I can just literally look at the picture and know what class it is. I don't have to read any words.
Yeah.
Like I know by the picture, click on that box and that's taking me to
Yeah.
gospel worldview or whatever.
And if you want to see the examples with him, the images of his exact courses from the semester are in the digital version of this under examples. So you can actually see the course images and even steal them. And I don't think he'll be offended if you're also teaching the same classes as he is. Yeah, I themed mine by year so that I can just look at the image and know what year it came from or what semester. Okay, so another thing, banners. So for years, if you taught an online or page course, you've seen these banners that they put at the top, which I always thought were nifty because mine by default, it doesn't come with this. So it's actually really easy to make these if you want to make your own. So let me go over to, let me go back to the practice course actually. Edit. So if you want this, so when you get into your course by default, you will just see, so none of this would be there. Sorry, that's because I was editing earlier, but you'll see a little cog up in the top left. It's like the very first cog in that's the general section that's always there by default, regardless of format that you're using for it. So it's always there. So if you click that cog, it'll open the general section. You know you're in the right one if it says general here. That's where you're looking. And so what you can do is you can change the name, or a lot of times there won't be any name. We'll leave that blank. And then you can do is you can make a banner. The way that online has its banners, if I can delete that, I'm barely selected. Oh, whatever, I'll just create a new one. Is actually through a table. All it is through a table. So click this button to expand for the full editing options for the text box. And then you can go down here and click table. And what we want to create that kind of just a simple, nice banner is a 1-by-1 table. And you want it to expand the full width. So the way that you get it to do that is put 100%. 100% will make sure that that single cell table expands the full width of your course. And then if you want it to have a background of color, you would go into the advanced tab and under background color. It's also possible to use images and to do some stuff with frames, but I'm just going to focus on the background color. So background color, and you can click on there and you can choose whatever color. I didn't go through it, but there is a link to the Jessup style guide. So for example, if you wanted to specifically use Jessup blue or Jessup red, if you click on that link and go into the style guide, you can get the little hexadecimal code for the particular colors that Jessup uses. And so you could choose Jessup blue. I'm just going to choose like with the color picker here in random blue and insert that. And so then I have my little single cell table. And then you just type in it. You make sure that the text is centered, unless you don't want it centered. Make sure to change your font size because it starts small, and make sure to choose a color that is offset from whatever your background color is. So I'm going to choose white, and then I'm just going to call this practice course. And we can make that smaller if we want. There we go. Save changes. No, I think it's messed up because I didn't delete that other table. Let me go back in here one second. Let's see if we can delete that other table.
Bradley, some of us feel like we just have too much time on things.
There we go.
This is a lot of details. This is really.
Too much time on my hands? I mean, possibly, I don't know. Doesn't feel like it.
Intuitive, like very not. I need a handout with this and that.
Or Bradley, could we just hire you?
Yeah.
Are you available?
Consulting service.
Yeah.
I made some infographics a year ago for like how to add Zoom to your class. Because when I come back every semester, I'm like, I don't remember how to do that, or how to add a quiz. I usually set it by staff. But he's so good, and he's very helpful. I bug him all the time, but I want to tell him, you all you can.
I didn't know that. Just
There we go.
like a 1-800 number.
Get his phone number, text him, whatever you want.
2 a.m.
Take
set
care
up
of
your
it.
movie
Yeah.
course, yeah.
Kids are old enough, they're not in this.
Some reason it's
So
not.
is that supposed to go all the way over, Bradley? Is that what you're
It is like
It's never done anything. It goes like halfway over, and I don't know
Oh,
what I'm
what did
wrong,
you
but
just
they
do?
always look like
so
that. for me.
100% sure. Again, I think it was initially messed up because of the other text box that was in there. Let
But
me
you
try
get
one more time.
center on there too, though.
He did.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just had to go and press type in 100% again, and then it should expand the full width. Yeah. Okay, so there's a very simple banner. You can do more advanced banners in that same place. You can insert an image. There's an insert image option. or GIF. So just a quick example of what that looks like. It'd be something like this. It would just be up at the top. I made this through the website Canva. There's some links to some websites to make, like if you want to make like custom banners, like if you want something with a verse on it, with a nifty background, you want to use kind of a meme generator, or again, Canva allows you to make really interactive banners with moving images or static, things like that. So you could make an image on Canva and then just drag and drop it in there and have an image.
Same as the label, or the label just?
Okay, here, this is a label, I use the label here, but it's the same, you would manipulate it the same way because it's the same text box interface. Technically, this actually is a label that I included there. Okay, so the last thing in this section, and I don't actually think I have it written in here, but I want to talk about it, is collapsible menus. So these have been turned on. So by default, when you go into a new Moodle web page, or if you're importing something maybe that you've been using for a while, it defaults to weak view, and you just bring in your material and it expands vertically, and you end up having this kind of what they call the quote unquote scroll of death if you have a lot of material. So collapsible menus. So you can get collapsible menus by going again to edit for your Moodle page and scrolling down and then looking at course format. By default, it's on weekly format, where it has this like the 14 weeks for the semester. If you want those collapsible topics, you pick collapsed topics. And that'll change everything and make it collapsible. Even the week format will be made, can be made collapsible. But any new sections you add will have that collapsible feature. So that's really useful if you have a lot of material, but you don't want everybody to have to scroll through it. So by at this point, all PACE courses by default are that way as well, which is really useful because they tend to be very, very long. And so it really helps the students and even the instructors, frankly. There's a bunch of settings. You're welcome to play around with it. There's all sorts of interesting things you can do. You can actually make it into a grid format with collapsed topics. For example, you can have 2 columns instead of a single column. All sorts of stuff that you could play around with. I'm not going to get into all that now, even the colors. So, but when you have them, it looks like this. And again, it makes it much more functional. Yes, I'm good.
Brad, on the, you have important documents assignment, how do I tried that, but I started getting toggle and stuff on my labels.
So make sure not to click the label because then you'll just edit it. So if you click on any of the side, it'll expand. Is that every time?
No, where it says default setting, you go back to the previous.
Oh. Sorry, not that. That's not what you want. You want. This one?
Yeah, so you know it says default and then toggle word. Right there. You just, yeah.
Toggle.
Elements.
Under elements.
Under elements.
Oh, here we go. Oh, there's it.
So when you click on that, it gives you a whole bunch of options, but toggle is showing up in my thing. Like, I don't know how you got rid of all of those extra words.
So this is the default. This is the default what it'll have in terms of the naming. But you can rename them all. So I never mess with like what the default name is because I just end up renaming them all anyways. So by default, it's saying it's going to be the topic number, then the week, and then the day. But what you can do is, regardless of what the default is set to, you can rename the individual topics just by actually clicking on the title or clicking the little edit button and call it anything you want. And so that's what I do. But that would be useful if, for example, you were making new topics that you wanted with like the weeks already laid out based on what the semester end, start and end dates are, or something like that. Okay, so collapse topics, really functional, also help with visuals. Other things that can help with visuals, labels. Labels are kind of a catch-all. I mean, they're particularly good for dividing up even further your material. So for example, I have important documents, but oops, I still got activity completion on it. It's okay, I'll leave it there for now. But even now, it's still kind of long. So let's say you wanted within important documents, I always upload, for example, test solutions after an exam. You can bring in a label and it just provides you with a text box that you can essentially put anything in. So I might put test solutions. Let's make it bold and yeah, that's fine. And that gives me just a little text marker that I can move around and use to kind of offset other material. And you'll see again, PACE uses this really well, where they'll have within a given week, they'll have course materials, student resources, PowerPoints. I forget what the different tags are, but essentially it's just a way to like provide headers for like subcategories of material. Label is kind of just a catch-all though. Essentially, you can put anything in there you want. You can use a label if you want to stick in just an extra graphic someplace. You can put an image in that text box and then that image will look like. You could put a video, an embedded video in that text box, and then there'll just be a video here. So you can
Just
really,
by putting a label someplace?
a label, it just gives you that text box. So anything you can put in that text box will then appear where you place that label. So it's kind of a catch-all. Now, there are sometimes better ways of doing certain functionalities. For example, I wouldn't always use it for URLs, but in theory, you actually could use it that way, but I wouldn't do that.
See what that looks like from the student's perspective.
It'll work exactly like that, sure.
But your little firing rocket right there is a label, you said,
Yeah.
right? That was a label that you just dropped in there.
Yep, a label, and then I threw in a GIF image. It does come with another activity completion track.
Yeah.
May or may not want to do.
So if you made that bigger and it'd be more noticeable.
Yeah, you make it. The other way, then this is another thing I want to talk about is another way to offset material. So again, that it kind of stands out is to use horizontal position. And so one way is you may not necessarily want to make the text bigger, but what you can do is you can put in a label that's bold like that, and then you can move the other content beneath it. Do I not have editing turned on? Oh yeah, I just came back as an instructor. You can move the other content to the right. So kind of like you've tabbed it over, but you can offset it to the right. So for example, I could offset this by clicking move right. Again, this is another thing that PACE does really well in offsetting that material so that they have this as a header, and then all the material beneath it is kind of shifted right just one step, so that you can see this is kind of like a heading, and then there's the content beneath it. But again, labels are really versatile. Again, it's one of those things that you can overuse because there are specific other types of activities for specific functions, but in theory, you could use the labels for a lot.
Once you have your course set up, you've got all your GIFs, your labels, all this stuff. Is IT able to move that over to your next class so you don't lose any of that
Import.
customization?
You want the import function. So generally, do not recreate your Moodle page for each course from scratch every semester. You want to import. So in fact, most of this I did not put in here. This was all imported from the last time I taught this course. So the way that you import from a previous course is you go up to the settings cog, then you go down to import. And you can search for, it'll show you recent courses, but you can search for any course in the entire school. Technically, you can import classes that are not your own. For example, I can search for the last time we did Bible 100 or 100, 101. Yeah. And then it'll show me Bible 101. And I can import those. And that'll import all the content from those courses. So when I was building this course, which I haven't actually really manipulated yet, that's just I just searched, this is Math 410, so I just searched Math 410. And then I just went to the latest semester that I had taught it, which was fall 20. I clicked on that, went through the import options, and I'll take you through some of those. So we click continue. These are the different categories of material it's going to show you. So by default, you can just leave all those checked. It doesn't matter all that much. but then it shows you everything in your course from the previous build of that course. And you can, by default, they're all clicked, but you can unclick those, or leave them, and it'll just import all of that in. Come on.
Yeah, just one hand here, when you import the course, uncheck the Turnitin because you will import the previous students from previous class to your class host.
Okay, so
You have to uncheck all Turnitin assignments
Correct.
They have to be created every time.
every time.
interesting.
individually.
Yeah.
Google assignments do not need to be recreated. So you can import Google assignments and it will make you relink them, but the links will already be there. You click on it, it'll ask you to associate it with your Google account, but then it will just bring in the new students. So it'll keep the assignment and the rest of the content there, but it'll import it with the new students if you want to use Google
And it
assignments.
also give you the originality report that Turnitin does, so.
Right.
I haven't used that, so I don't, I know that Google has something like originality. They have where they'll compare it to other writings. I don't know if it's as good because it's not something I use. But because I don't use it for essays, I use it for other functionality, but
Brad, last time I did this, though, all my dates for due dates were wrong. When I did
Be-
it.
so when you import it, it'll keep all those types of settings. So yeah, so it'll keep the date settings. So you may need to edit those.
So you still have to go through each one.
If you plugged in a specific date into the assignment itself. Yeah,
Yeah, so if you change into the heading dates, when you import, it's not gonna bring in the new date, it's gonna bring in whatever it is that's been saved. So you're gonna have old dates for your new course. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
So it's-
The other thing is, the other thing is when you import, it doesn't, if you try to scrub over that with another import, it doubles your content. You guys have seen this, right? So you have to use IT to scrub the whole thing before you re-import.
well, but you can also turn things off if you don't want to import them again. So you can select the content. So if you need to do another import on top of the first, just make sure you unselect, like if I don't want any of my previous assignments, I could just unclick assignments. Or if I don't want any of my previous blank presentations, I can unclick those these are by the actual topics that I had. So you're basically turning off individual topics. Or presentations with notes. Generally, I don't want those because they've got writing on them already. So you can put that, and then you wouldn't double import those particular things. You can, of course, turn them on and off individually as well. So like, I can turn off the syllabus from fall 20. I don't need my fall 20 syllabus, or I don't know, something else. The test project or announcements, because there'll be an announcements in there already.
You can turn off announcements because you double that.
Yes, so the things that'll double by default would be topics. So if you have, when you start a new Moodle shell, it already has the 14 weeks in there. If you import any other topics, like I have here, those will be on top of that, and you'll still need to go through and delete those 14 weeks. And then the announcement section is the other thing that's always there by default. And so if you import that, you would need to turn the other one off or unclick it here so it doesn't get doubled. There was one other thing that I wanted to make. Oh, linking. So we're not gonna, we're already out of time. Do you think Philip will mind? Linking. Linking is the last thing I want to talk just briefly. You can use a lot with URLs, particularly you can link to materials in the library. For example, I have this, oh crap, did I close it? From my senior seminar. You can link directly to library resources, even by chapter, not just like a particular document, but a specific place in the document. Yeah, here it is. So if I click on this URL, it will take me directly to, and I got this through the library resources, so the students have access to it, but you can link to a particular chapter. So if you're using materials from within the library, when you open it up, there is a permalink option. If you grab this URL and you put it in your Moodle, it'll send them right to not only a particular book, but a particular chapter and section within that book. So that's great for linking to specific readings. You can also use this to share folders or content directly from Google Drive. So if you have an entire folder of content within Google Drive, that you want them to have access to, then you can click the share option on that Google Drive folder, grab the link, just be careful of the permissions. You want to make sure that you correctly set it as viewer, contributor, whether or not you want students to be able to have access to put stuff in that folder, generally probably not. So make sure you look at the permissions, but then you can throw that URL into Moodle using the URL function. And then they will have direct access to those materials. So that's under all and then URL. And so you can name the URL here and then put the URL actual code there. So directly link to a folder or content within Google Drive, library resource, OpenStax textbooks will allow you to permalink to particular pages and content like that. Yes, sir.
Have you gotten to the point in your math classes that you don't need a textbook?
For most of them, there are a few upper division courses where we still, I mean, they all use textbooks, but we use mostly open source or open access textbooks.
For your classes? is it?
Yeah. There are maybe 3 upper division courses that still use a traditional textbook, but we've tried to move away from most of them.
There's a huge trend in moving away from textbooks to the level material.
Yeah.
Especially math, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we have access to a lot of materials in our library. So search for materials through library.jessup.edu, because again, you can directly link to them. Bible Gateway, you can link to if you're in a Bible class and you want a particular passage or chapter in a particular version, you can directly link to that for reading. So there's a lot of open access and open source materials available. Okay, I'm over time. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for joining me today.